I just mute myself. And just so folks know, Gateway Association will be recording this session to make it available for those folks who were not able to attend today's session. And we have another session from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. today with Deb and Avril. So it's 1:04. We'll start session in 10 minutes. Let's give it 10 more minutes. So if you have something to do, you can come. Oh, nice, Deb. That's the one you rescued. Cool. If you guys have something to do for 10 minutes, please go ahead. If you want to grab a coffee, grab a blanket, get comfortable. We're going to be online for 2 hours with Deb and Avril.
How do I do this now? How did I just leave?
Donna, just so you know, you're not muted, but that's okay. Did you have
I've lost everything here, and I hear you, but I don't see you. And I don't know how to, and I don't know how to mute it either. Sorry.
Unique can help you out. Unique, if you go next to her name and mute her, you can do that. That's totally okay. There you go. I think we have 5 people. Deb and Avril, can you see how many participants there are? Okay. And you can see the chat as well, in case a question comes up. Hi, Kristen from Red Deer. That's awesome. Thanks for joining in today.
Yeah, I can see the chat.
Awesome. Kay Anderson, was it you who was not able to get the links yesterday that Kim was helping out? Yes, awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. Devin, Avril, you guys too. If you want to step out and come back in 5 minutes, that's okay too, just so you know. Unique as well, I'll be here. We're recording this session today. And if you do not consent, please send us a chat so we will leave your name out of it. Kim had a question. I don't know if people saw the chat. She's asking if anybody is a caregiver for a 17-year-old. But I think we have some scenarios today, Kim, that we'll be talking about that includes 17-year-olds about to turn 18 or those who've just turned 18. It's 12:10. Hi, Kim. I can see you now. Are you Kim? I don't know why I call you Kim. Yeah, you are? Wow, okay. It's a great coincidence. Awesome. Wow, there are two Kims today, and a Kiri and a Donna. Awesome. It's 12:10, so I think we can get started. Hi, Deb. Hi, Avril. You guys are muted, just so you know. Okay, there you go. Yeah, awesome. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Gateway Association is hosting conversation cafes on Wednesdays from 1 to 3 p.m. and then again from 7 to 9 p.m. on the same day, just so that we are accessible to families and caregivers who might not be free or 7 and 9. So the series that we are on right now is called Not Eligible for PDD, ? Now what? ? It came out of some conversations with FSCD where they said, there's the unmet needs category is a big category. And while there are many resources for those that are eligible for PDD, relatively speaking, there aren't that many for those that are not eligible for PDD. And Gateway initially created a steering committee with Deb and Avril and our partners at FSCD to have a one-day trade show that would cover speakers, tables, resources on this very topic. And that was not to be due to COVID. Converted this into an online series and have different resources and experts each week to speak about what's available. So today we have Deb.
Oh, I think we're lost.
We lost Hannah.
We've
She's gone
lost you,
fishing.
Sahana.
Well, you know what? We'll just go ahead and start. So, Avril, do you want to talk a little bit about us?
Sure. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Deb and I are incredibly informal. We'll jump in on top of each other and we'll add to the stories that we're going to present to you guys. So Deb and I are called the Integrated Transition Specialists. And the thing about our role is that we've been in this role for about 6 years, I think. And when we were hired to do this role, it came with no job description. And the reason why it came with no job description is because they wanted us to continue to be fluid and to change as our individuals change, as the clients change, as the people that we assist change. And so in the 6 years that Deb and I have been working in this position, it has been amazing in that we have now been able to work from 0 to death individuals. They don't need status with Children's Services or PDD or FSCD. We can work with any individual regardless of age or status. And when we go in, we're very, very grassroots. And what we mean by grassroots is that when we go into a family situation, we do an assessment. And if we find that maybe if we got mom onto PDD, then mom would be better off at managing the kids in her home. And so we would assist them with the PDD application as well. So our jobs continue to be fluid and ever changing. We were also hired because neither of us accept no for an answer. And if somebody says no to us, then we always say, how come, why not, and how can we change it? And the other thing that we do is we look at barriers in service and we come up with solutions to try and assist with the barriers so that we can break down the barriers if it's prohibiting and stopping our individuals from becoming successful.
So basically what happened all these years ago is Children's Services was realizing that they were really struggling with aging out youth from their system. So when children at the time would turn, young adults at the time would turn 22 or 24, and now back to 22 possibly, and their file was closing, they ended up having a lot of involvement, like post-studies in the judicial system and homelessness and hospitalization. And at the same time, PDD, so persons with developmental disabilities, they were having a struggle with, now what happens when someone's not PDD eligible? What happens to that individual? Where do they refer them? Because they were seeing the same things. They were seeing non-PDD eligible young adults end up in the judicial system, end up in the medical system, and homelessness. So they had this conversation between Children's Services and Disability Services and said, why don't we join together and create a couple of positions that would have staff that would focus on these transition issues and the barriers that come with aging out young people from Children's Services and non-eligible PDD folks. So that's when they hired Avril and I. They actually were looking for out-of-the-box thinkers. They wanted people that would challenge the systems and also look to, like Avril mentioned, to create new processes. So hence, they hired Avril and I, and we both come from Children's Services. So my background with Children's Services is I've been a frontline caseworker for 21 years, and mainly I had a high-risk youth caseload. So most of my youth were getting in lots of trouble, and who I have a real passion for. I just feel like we're, like most people, we're just misunderstood. And then Avril can talk a little bit about her career.
So my career, I have 38 years. It's a lot of years. And my specialty is medically fragile, palliative care, and then autism. And so between Deb and I, when you add it up, we have almost, I don't know,
A lot.
70 years of experience. And it's not that if we were to work with one of your kids, we overlap in what we do because we're both good at being able to manage. And there are many times though that Deb and I, we always say we have no egos. And if I find a file or a case that is really not where this file should be, then I would call Deb and say, can you take over for me, because this is your field of expertise. So we're
a lot of people call us Devril because we intercross each other's thinkings and process so often. And somebody has put a question on there about, do we work across Alberta? We are Edmonton and area, but we do get calls from all over the place. People will message us and just ask us some questions. Of course, we don't know what all the resources are, but we know what the province of Alberta's mandate is for Children's Services, and we know what it is for PDD and for family supports with children with disabilities. But we'll do our best to help anyone. We have an incredible boss, Kelly Zahara, and she has not put us in a box. She has allowed us to be creative and to be able to look at helping anyone who needs help.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb and Avril. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm back. Thanks for that introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about chat and how that came to be? And I'm sure that people logged in today would be curious about the connection to FSCD, Alberta Supports, PDD. How do we make sense of that? Where do you guys fit in there?
Well, I guess the main thing is we actually sit with PDD and FSCD. So we're not in the Children's Services office. We're in the Disability Services office in downtown Edmonton. And our role is to help support those workers of, especially the FSCD, not eligible for PDD. So FSCD, Family Supports of Children with Disabilities. not eligible for PDD, persons with disabilities. So we're actually sitting there. And so we meet with their families and workers as well as children's services and well, basically any government or private agency.
And so chat. So chat came to be because when Deb and I again first started, our bodies are in PDD offices, and one of the criteria was when people were denied PDD, they were given a letter. And Deb and I, along with Lance Shimp, who was the intake worker for PDD, we felt that a letter wasn't going to cut it for a lot of these families because they're desperate. And so we wanted to be able to provide them with services that would be beneficial to them once they were denied PDD. And so what we did was we came up with CHAT, and CHAT stands for Communities of Service Helping Albertans to Transition. And it's a fancy long title, but really when you boil it down, it is a 1 hour, very informal coffee table style meeting that we have with the individual and a support person. And we talk about their hopes and their dreams and what they would like out of the meeting. It is not a case conference. It is about the individual and giving them the services and the programs that they need to be successful.
And chat, sorry, I was just
no,
going to say too that chat is only 3 days a month. So that's a small part of what we do, what Av was talking about. Okay, go ahead, Av.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, chat is very informal, and in the olden days, without the COVID crisis, what we would do is we would meet with at Income Support, and we have professionals that sit at the table with us. So we have Deb and myself, we have somebody from Alberta Work Supports, and we have Disability Services. So the table offers a ton of really good, knowledgeable people that are able to think on the fly and come up with solutions for very, very complex individuals that come to the chat meeting.
And I just want to add how, like, when chat got created, Avril and I and Lance sat in a room and we thought about, we need to have this meeting. We need to have a meeting where people come and feel supported and heard. But how do we want this meeting to run? And we actually started at the end. So how we created chat was, how do we want someone to feel when they leave? And that's how we went. So we wanted someone to feel heard, supported, listened to, and have resources. So we even went as far as when, like I said, we started at the end, was if you were to come to my house for a coffee and you left, it would be like, man, that was so nice that Avril offered me a coffee. Man, that was so nice that Avril offered me a cookie. So we actually have coffee, tea, and real creamer, and Avril bakes, and you know, we have real baking at the table and candy, because we know that one of the things that gets lost in meetings is the personalized piece of that. So that's how we started, is chat at the end, and how people will feel when they leave. And that's really, chat is an incredible meeting. And we have done stats, and every single person of the hundreds and hundreds that have come through chat have experienced that, and they have written in their feedback that that's how they felt when they left. Go ahead.
So one of the things that we did was we wanted to ensure that the program was successful and that it was meeting the goals and targets that we had in place. And that was ensuring that the individual was getting, in that 1 hour time, the best bang for their buck. And so what we did was we kept stats, and we kept, and then we were able to adjust chat as we went on. And I think for the last 5 years, there hasn't been a moment that we haven't looked at the program and continue to tweak it to make it the most amazing program that it is today. And again, it's one of those meetings that when you come to it, it's all about the individual. And we all have different tasks when we hold the meeting. Deb usually chairs the meeting. She's very good about talking to the individual. She makes it very clear that the meeting is strictly about the individual, and she asks the questions to the individual. If at any time the support person gets in the Deb's space and she's going to tell them, she's going to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk to you. This is about the individual. We also keep very accurate notes. So when the individual comes, they don't have to write notes. So we keep notes for them that we could then give them at the end of the meeting, and we call that the blueprint. And during the meeting, Pauline and I, or whoever from Disability Services, is always looking at programs, because every single meeting that we have chat is not cookie cutter. It is based on the individual needs of that person. And so between us, we must have thousands of resources that we're able to bring up and access, and then send the individual off with that information. If at times we find that we need to do a little bit more hands-on, maybe the person is on the spectrum and going out and meeting an individual, if we've set up a support person, they wouldn't be very successful at doing it by themselves. We will then make a phone call during the chat meeting and have the individual on speakerphone so that we can connect them. And if they need to go to a different program, then they know who they're going to meet because they've already made that connection. So during a chat meeting, we try and break down all the barriers to ensure that the individuals are going to be successful.
And you know, Avril is bang on when she said chat is about the individual. We're there to support. One of the barriers that we sometimes have is when we have other people come in to support them, and the young person will not engage with us if we are not listening to them. So if, you know, when we ask them, what do you want to do? And then the caregiver, the mom, or the group home worker, or whoever answers the question, you know, we will say, look, I really need to hear from so-and-so, because this is about them, this is for their life. And we find that that empowers them to speak to us. And through that, we can create a good plan. If we don't do that, what ends up happening is the plan is for the other person, not for the individual, and then we don't have the success we want to see for that person. You know, we prefer to have everybody in person, even when we've been doing it through, we have a program like this called WebEx, and we've been doing our chat meetings through WebEx. We still prefer to have the young person there. Chat works best when there is no plan. It's not the best process for somebody who is in school or with children's services and getting support. It's just people that are close to aging out of some sort of a system, or people who just like, where do I go? What do I do from here? So like I said, chat's only 3 days a month. Now, our role as the integrated transition specialist is also very much like chat, but we're Avril and I, we split up and we go and we meet with families such as yourselves that are here today. And, you know, we have a conversation about, you know, man, like some parents will say, I am so scared. I've been getting all this support through FSCD and now it's done. And my kid's not PDD eligible and I don't know what to do. And I'm tired and I'm scared. And then we just talk through. We just are an ear, and we try to think of some resources, and Avril and I can help with ASH applications, especially for, you know, it can be very overwhelming for people to know what to write, and we've got some tips and tricks, and we can help people individually through that, as well as again, having that conversation with the kids.
And I
Deb
think
and Avril.
sorry.
Go ahead, Avril.
I think one of the biggest, I think the best thing that we do though is that Deb and I never look at disability, we look at ability. And I think that us going into a home and meeting with families and parents, we bring to it a different light, because we're able to look at all the amazing things that the parents have done through positive parenting. And it shows in these amazing individuals that we meet with. And I think sometimes when you are so close to the situation and you deal with it every single day, you forget about how amazing these individuals are that live with you. And I think having Deb and I come in is we can fine tune and look at all the positives that these individuals bring. And we're able to then hook them up with the best supports that will continue to allow them to just grow and strengthen and become amazing adults.
That's a great introduction, and I have a few like I would say pragmatic questions from our viewers. One is, can any caregiver or an individual call you and say, hey, we need help? Can they directly, when I say call, I mean, can they directly email you? And if so, what's your email address?
So yes,
Sure.
they can. We'll talk to anybody, and we prefer emails to phone calls because we're out a lot. And I did send our email out. I'm not sure, maybe I didn't do it to all maybe, but I did send it out there. But yeah, there you
Perfect.
go. You please feel free to shoot us an email, and we will do our best to help you. Sometimes if you, when we have meetings, people will identify with Avril, and they'll be like, man, I just want to talk to Avril. And sometimes it's me. And so we don't have any ego. Email who you want to email. Email both of us. Sometimes in this world, because we're separated a lot, you might get answers from both of us. Sometimes Avril and I don't even maybe agree. And that's okay too. We love that. We love when we don't agree on something and we question each other. And because like Avril said, she's got so many years of experience and she's such a wealth of knowledge. And, I have my own things too. And so we're good at going back and forth and figuring things out. And we're not ashamed of that. We're actually proud of that.
Awesome. And they can call you even if they have a caseworker, even if they're already involved in one system, they can still access you guys. And who's responsible to bring the caseworker into the picture? Like, do you guys directly contact them, or is the family involved?
Well, it's a couple of things have happened. So one is a lot of times the caseworkers refer to us, and then we'll come into a meeting, come to the home or whatever. Sometimes the caregiver is at odds with their caseworker and maybe not feeling supported, and they just want to talk, and that's okay too. But if we're starting to do something, then usually we'll CC the caseworker in. But sometimes caregivers, they just need to talk about the situation, and we can't bump the social worker out, but we can have a conversation. And then if we feel that the worker needs to be in, or the supervisor or anybody else, then we can add that in.
That's awesome. That's really encouraging for people to hear that they can still access you even if they're at odds with their caseworker. That's awesome. And so regardless of what system the caregiver is already accessing, they can contact you. And if for some reason you feel maybe that's not your role, you will redirect them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I want to do is get into some scenarios so that people can get a good grasp of the spectrum of supports you guys can provide. So I want to start off with Deb. Deb, we will go over maybe say 4 or 5 scenarios, and then we will move to Avril. Avril, feel free to jump in at any point. And for the audience, after every 3 scenarios, we're going to stop to see if you have any questions. And I'm sure that some of you may have maybe your own scenario that you're bringing forth. Please just make sure that since this is being recorded, that you don't reveal any confidential information, and try to keep your so that Deb and I can help out. And I just say, since our session is only 2 hours long, and I know how in depth Deb and Avril can go into a scenario, might be best to for the audience just to get a sense of okay, these guys can help me, these are some potential scenarios, and I'm going to email them after the session so that I can actually get on a full chat meeting. So that's kind of the best approach right now, so that you can access them with more time than just 2 hours or 1 hour left in this session. And that's okay with you guys, right? Thumbs up. Cool. Awesome. So Deb, I want to start off with I know one of the tools that you guys use, which is called a picture frame. Can you tell us maybe, describe how you used a picture frame with a scenario? So
Sure.
people get a sense. Yeah.
Sure. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've worked with, what people deem high-risk youth for basically my whole career. And, I always felt very confident in all of the scenarios that I went into. And I felt, I'm not saying the beginning when I first became a social worker, I think I learned more from caregivers and got tuned in a couple of times and learned to be human when I was talking with people. But, with working with individuals in my role as a caseworker, and then I started as a transition specialist. And right away, we realized that what we needed to develop something to help us write down or write notes about someone's story for them. So it's kind of like a vision board, but on paper. And so we created this little picture frame. And we're going to attach this. And we call it our $1 million piece of paper, because I've really found this taught me at the very beginning a huge lesson, and it's been a really important tool for us. So it's called the big picture, and then on it says in the future. So we created this because we wanted to, when we were talking with individuals, to write down things that they wanted in their future so that we could focus on that instead of having a note paper or computer in front of you. So one of the first times I used it, I was all, I guess I kind of got worked up to be so professional about this piece of paper. And I'm really not so professional. I'm a pretty informal person. So I went to a meeting, and so this was about 6 years ago. And I went to a meeting at a group home with a 17-year-old female that was born biologically termed male. So I went in there with my piece of paper to her, and I said, so, I've got this piece of paper, and I just want to talk about your hopes and your dreams. And she just looked at me like I was crazy. And she actually said, are you effing out of your mind? And I kind of got nervous. I could feel my pulse racing, and because I wanted to be so correct with terminology, because I hadn't worked with a transgender person before, and I had all this stuff in my head, and I wanted to be so right. And I just said, well, probably. Then we just started having some dialogue about this piece of paper. It says, the whole purpose of the paper is just put down your hopes and your dreams. I'm all, yay, go for it. And she said, how can I tell you my hopes and my dreams when I can't even look in the mirror? And I was like, inside, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. What do I do now? Because I was tripping over my own, instead of being natural, I think I was trying to be too formal. So I said, wow, I'm tripping over my own thoughts because I'm not being natural right here. I said, can I start again? Can I start again with you? And, she's like, yeah. I said, okay, so this is a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. And what I'd really like to do today is talk to you about some of the things that maybe you can imagine even in the future, that maybe something that would be helpful for you. And I said, you just said to me that, you can't even look in the mirror. And I said, I felt really nervous when you said that, because I felt really sad that you're going through that. And I said, but I'm wondering, is there anything that you've ever thought about that could help you look in the mirror? And she said, yeah, I'd like no facial hair, because she had a significant amount of facial hair. And I was like, wow, okay, let's put that down there. And then we started having a conversation around facial hair and lasers and all this kind of stuff. And as we talked and I became more me and more natural, she opened up more as well. And she had these beautiful ideas about transgender housing. And it was just incredible. And honestly, at the end of that meeting, and it is still being the most full piece of paper I have ever had, because I stopped it being a process and turned it into being a conversation. And I learned so much. I learned so much from that individual. So at the end of the day, I'm with the caseworkers with me at this meeting, and I have this beautifully filled piece of paper. And I know that words can just be words without action. And so I said, all right, we've talked about a lot of stuff here. What is the main thing that you would like to see on this paper happen? And she said, I want like the facial hair gone. And I'm like, okay, I can't make any promises. You know, I was like, but I can sure look into this and get your worker, you know, like the workers sitting there, you know, and look into this as well. So then we started the trying to figure out, because now I mean, things have changed in communities and supports, but back then there wasn't the funding for someone to get their facial hair removed. And so, you know, I contacted somebody that I knew that owned a aesthetics place, and I said, will you like give half of this if I can get funding for the other half? And they're like, yep. And so then the worker went to her people and got that funded. And then Avril and I step away then, and we give this in for the worker to follow up with. But what happened was is I kept in contact, and they said the change in this individual, that after, like, not only just getting their laser done and their facial hair removed, but the change in that individual was just being heard, and was huge. And so I don't know what's happening with that individual now, because like I said, we step away. But I do know that I learned a lot from that very first big picture. And I think that it was a really positive experience for that individual too.
That's awesome. I see that for professional caregivers that might be on and as part of our audience today, you know, when you talk about goals, when you talk about dreams and hopes, a lot of the times it's you know, there's a certain notion of what your dreams and hopes need to be. And what I'm picking up from your scenario is that it could be something really small that'll just help them face the very first step, because that may be a point from where they can take off and do other things, right? So it's this idea of dreams and hopes need not be some big idea out there in the future. It could be something so immediate to you. Can you give us another scenario, Deb, where you talked more about hopes and dreams and how that went off, a different one?
Yeah, so this is at a chat meeting, and we had a young lady and her caseworker come in, and she was very flat. So she came in, and you know, we're all chipper. It's a pretty upbeat room, and you know, she didn't want any snacks or drink or anything. She kind of had her head down, and you know, so through talking, you know, she said, you know, she wants to be an RCMP. So she was very flat. It's like, so, you know, do you have a career goal? Yeah, I want to be an RCMP. We're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I work in a store. Okay, so, you know, do you know what you need to do to be an RCMP? And she's just very, very flat. And then she said, yeah, I really like horses. And Avril's a horse person, so Avril jumped in and was like, oh, horses! And they had this whole horse conversation. And then she loosened up a little bit, but she wasn't feeling supported to become an RCMP, because, you know, she says, oh, you know, I got debt and I can't do it. And so, you know, Avril said to her, well, have you thought about taking one step towards that and maybe looking at being a security guard? And she popped her head up and she's like, security guard? Well, I never thought of that. Maybe I could do that. And anyways, our meeting went on, and there was a little bit of conflict between her and her worker, but at the end of the day, she laughed and she was a little bit more upbeat, and she had her blueprints, and she was considering some of these things that we talked about. So then it was about 2 days later, there was a message on my answering machine, and she's like, "Hi, I applied for a job as a security guard. Thanks." Click. About 2 days later, she phones and she's like, "Hey, I have an interview." Click. About a day later, and I'm saving these messages because I wanted to play them for our chat team. And then she phones and she's like, "I got the job. I got the job as a security guard." And she was like the difference in her voice was like from this like monotone to this so excited. Anyways, I've been keeping in touch with her, and she had a job as a security guard. Then it wasn't giving her enough hours, so she got a better job as a security guard. And in the meantime, I talked to one of the children's advocates who was a former RCMP, and I said, "I got this girl and she really wants to do this." And she's like, "Oh my God, I so want to meet her and I so want to help her." And so they got connected, and like she is actually on her step forward to becoming an RCMP. She's working towards doing the things she needs to be. Not that I like we're all these amazing, super powered people at Chat, but I think the difference was as she came, we believed in her, we helped her see some steps and open up her hopes and dreams that you can be whatever you want to be. And honestly, when Avril said we focus on ability, not disability, we actually drive people nuts because we say that so much. And even at our meetings, when everybody wants to focus on the disability, "Oh, but they have, oh, but they did, oh, but they blah," we're like, no, what can they do? What can we look at moving forward? And that's where we found that we've had people reach their most successful moments. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Thanks, Deb. Wow, that's quite the story. She's on her way to becoming an RC. That's really cool. So what I'm picking up from both the first and the second scenario is that you guys are not just looking at what are some resources within government that could be helping the people who come to Chat, but you're also looking at resources in the whole community right? Like you're looking at the esthetician that you knew, the person that was an ex-RCMP that you knew. So it's almost like you basically have developed a really big network of people, and you continue to build that network, and that's an added bonus to the work that you do, as opposed to maybe someone going into Alberta Supports directly and saying, "Hey, I need help." They may not be able to help them as much as you are, even though you're both government.
Yeah, I think like through Avril and I and our jobs and being able to think out of the box. And I mean, when Avril says we're inappropriate, we kind of are inappropriate. We talk about everything. Like I'm talking everything. Like we're talking birth control. We're having conversations about masturbation. We're talking about whatever comes up, and we're looking for support everywhere. That's why we don't say no to anybody. Because one day we could be knocking on your door saying, "Hey, remember, can you help us with this or that?" Because we truly believe that we're all human beings and we need to support each other. And when we put people into these silos that, because you're with children, we can only go to children's, we're not doing anybody a service. Public libraries, they have great, like many of them have awesome social workers, awesome resources. The symphony. We've had people come and we had Avril just have her son-in-law, who's a fighter pilot for the Canadian Army, sit in a chat at the end of the chat and talk to a young guy who wants to join the Army. And this kid's eyes were like this big. He couldn't believe he was talking to a fighter pilot, but we brought him in because that's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we always say that we're only as good as the team that we have behind us. And we're really good because we have an amazing team behind us that supports us. And we just continue to add on. to our people behind us in our resources. And if we don't know of a resource, we will pound the pavement until we find an appropriate resource.
Right. So you have a network and you continue to build that and you will find access. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I really wish you were to all Albertans and not just Edmonton and area, which would mean you would have a huge network if you were, imagine if your scope was entire Alberta. So there is somebody here from Red Deer. And so what if someone calls you from a different city? Do you think, how has that gone for you guys? Are you able to help at all or?
Yeah, we've had videos like this with Grand Prairie and whoever was like. I think we've actually did get a couple calls from Red Deer. Different children's services offices have called us from all over. We'll talk to anybody and try to do our best. Now, like I said, we don't really know what resources are in Edmonton or in Red Deer, sorry, but if someone's stuck, we'll try to figure it out. We'll try to find out. Sometimes it's just a matter of them talking out with somebody different. Sometimes it's just a matter of saying, look, this is my kid and this is what's going on. And sometimes it's helping people see what kind of, and I hate the word normal, but I'm going to use it, what's normal 17-year-old compared to, what is like the developmental of a 17-year-old compared to with the disability, and separating those disability. Like, we're just able to do whatever we can to help.
Okay, so let's move into another scenario where, say, someone is eligible for PDD. So they were in FSCD and now they're moving into PDD. Can you tell us a scenario where you might have helped with that? So maybe someone has hopes and dreams, but maybe no day programs.
Okay, so I've got several scenarios here, but I think I'm going to deviate a little bit here. So we had a young lady come to chat and she was getting support through FSCD and she was PDD eligible. And she was very significantly cognitively delayed. So we talked to her and she's like, I want to be a nurse. It's like, cool. Like, that's what I wanted to be before I became a social worker. Like, what is it that you love about being a nurse? We knew around the table that with an IQ of I think she was like 54 or something, that she's not going to be a registered nurse. But no one is going to sit at that table and say, sorry, you can't do that. We're going to be trying to think outside the box. So we said to her, what is it that you love about nursing? And she says, I love to paint people's nails. That is a beautiful, I said, one of the beautiful things that you can do when you're taking care of people is to help them feel good about themselves and paint their nails. And I love folding towels. And I'm like, that's so cool, because everybody needs a helper. When you're a nurse, people need to be folding towels. So if you couldn't work in a hospital and be a nurse, what kind of nurse? So if you did a nursing that you could paint people's nails and fold towels, I said, would you feel like your goals met? And she's like, yep. And she was PDD eligible. And so she was able to get involved with an agency that got her working in a care center. And she worked in a care center and she painted people's nails. And she did a great job. She was phenomenal at painting nails. And she would fold these towels. And her caregiver commented to us after that she literally, she knew she wasn't a nurse, but she was doing nursing. And so she felt like she had a purpose and a goal. She was getting AISH, yes, she was, but that's not a life, that's an income. So she had her AISH, she had a place to live, but that's not what we're about. We're about, what do you want? How do you fulfill your day? And so she had something that she wanted that made her feel fulfilled. So that's an example of somebody who is on FSCD and PDD eligible. And I know that right now PDD has very limited funding, and it's not unless you have extraordinary high needs that you're getting support. And so in this case today, would this young person get these same supports? I don't know. But what I do know is Avril and I would be there to help any family was trying to figure out what we could find to help.
I want to quickly go through maybe a scenario.
Sorry, we're losing you there. Oh, I think we
Okay.
lost.
Oh,
Yeah, I
I
think-
lost her. So
I
one
do
of the,
have,
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the things I want to say is that a lot of times when Deb and I meet with individuals and we ask them if they have a diagnosis, it is truly amazing that they identify with their diagnosis. And often these individuals can tell us all about their diagnosis. And when we ask them, oh, could you do that? And the first thing that they say is, oh, I can't do that. I have FASD, or I have autism, or I have, and it's amazing that once we chat with them for a longer period of time, all of a sudden they believe that they can do it. And I think it's just because we tell them they can.
And it's
And
really sad when they do. It's like, hey, I'm Deb and I'm a social worker. Oh, I'm Bob and I have FASD. Like, not, I like to swim, I like to run, I like to color, I like video games, nothing. It's heartbreaking. Really figure out who they are as a human.
And what their hopes and dreams are, and what they want to do with their life. And so I think that's why we're as good as we are, is because we're able to weed through that stuff and kind of figure out what they want and how to give it to them.
And we get said so many times, it's like, hey, what is it that you want in your future? Oh, I'm gonna get AISH.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you mean? You get, like, that's okay, that's income, but what are you gonna do? Oh, I'm gonna get AISH. Like, this person's on AISH, that person's on AISH, and I'm just gonna stay home and do nothing. And we're like, yeah, no, you're not. Like, there's a lot more to life than that.
Yeah, and you need a break. You can't sit in your home and play video games 24 hours a day, because that is not a life. And so it's finding something that excites them and gives them a purpose.
And then helping people understand too, and I mean those scenarios, and there's lots that we're going to be doing this meeting again about other stuff. But even with AISH wants examples that this person has tried to work, has tried to do something, so, there's a lot more to just putting up an AISH application. I know that, another example that I wanted to share with you guys is of a young man that came to chat, and he was receiving FSCD funding, but he was not eligible for PDD. So he came into a chat meeting, and he's 17 and a half years old, and he walks in, and behind him comes his very pregnant girlfriend. And we're like, oh, hi, who are you? And, he chose for her to be in the meeting, and it was, the dynamics of the meeting then changed. So we did need to concentrate on him being 17 and a half and not PDD eligible, and looking for what we can do, because he was quite severely impacted with FSD, with FCS, the alcohol, FASD, but he was not cognitively delayed enough to meet the criteria for PDD. And yet he is in there with his very pregnant girlfriend. So we started having a conversation, and find out that she has never seen a doctor, and that her first two children died. And I think one died immediately after birth, and one I think was a stillbirth too. Like, it was just terrible stuff, but she'd not seen a doctor. So we're like octopuses in that meeting. So we're trying to get him support, and we're trying to also get her support. So at that point, Alberta, she was over 18. she was just 18 or something. Alberta Works was able to get her funded for a cab. And at the end of the meeting, we had them both cabbed to Health for Two to see a doctor and get some milk coupons and all of that. Because we knew we needed to get that piece taken care of, because he's going to be a father and he has got some significant delays. We were contacting Health for Two. We were contacting a physician that would see them right away. We were contacting Norwood to try and get a worker into the home. So we were doing all of this stuff while at the same time trying to help him identify what the next steps were for him. And in his mind, AISH was it. You know, I'm going to get AISH. And I said, well, first of all, AISH is a process that's going to take time. So, you know, what are some of your barriers? And there were some significant barriers for this young man. And we don't typically in our meetings suggest that anybody go on income support or go on AISH or anything. Like, we'd like to get to know the situation a bit better. But in this situation, we felt that this young man might even benefit from having an assessment done, a psychological assessment, maybe his IQ rechecked. There was a lot going on. But what ended up happening is the doctor that we sent them to see wrote him a letter saying that he, when he turned, I'm moving on now to closer to 18 because we're working on this process, that when he turned 18, he got a letter saying that he could not work for a significant amount of time and went on a program through Alberta Works called Barriers for Full-Time Employment. And that bought us some time where he could have some income because they needed a place for this baby. And then by this point, Children's Services was involved. And so Avril and I stepped out of our chat role and also became a resource. So then they got referred to us as the integrated transition specialist to help them with their plan and help them to move forward. So that wasn't a chat where someone came and left with a resource. They came and we worked with them for probably, I think it was 8 or 9 months, that we were part of getting different people together, like getting Children's Services to meet, doctors to meet, and getting assessments done and all different kinds of things to get this family sorted out. At the end of the day, this child did end up going into care, but mom and dad had the support that were able to help them work through that process. And I'm not sure if the child came back or not, but like I said, at that point, we became a resource as a transition specialist to help them with that process.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb. I want to pause at this point to open up for some questions from the audience. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and if you want to pose a scenario, a question, anything will be okay. And we will also monitor the chat in case you don't want to speak and want to just type up a question.
Hi guys, I just wanted to comment that I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I work for Inclusion Alberta. I'm actually in the Calgary zone, but we're all across the province, and our main office is in Edmonton. And unfortunately, we're funded by PDD, so a lot of the individuals that we support need to be eligible, and obviously that is really devastating when we have to turn families away. So I think it's really great that, you know, there's a partner with similar viewpoints in following that normative pathway, and ensuring that individuals have the experiences and even being given the idea that, you know, they can lead a typical life. So thank you so much for doing that. Now, as far as partnership goes, I'm in Calgary, but a lot of my colleagues are in Edmonton area. So would we be able to kind of partner up with you and send families to you that we won't be able to support because of that PDD eligibility?
Absolutely. And we're ahead of you guys because we've already met with Inclusion in Edmonton. Deb and I had a coffee date with them. And so we've met with them, and they have actually referred individuals to us. but then it has gone the other way, and we've referred individuals to inclusion when we needed your guys' help as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm pretty low on the totem pole, so.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. We love it.
Great.
You know what happens is that people change, jobs change, positions, and they forget about us.
Yeah.
So, refresh your colleagues and about us, and definitely if they want to have another coffee with us or a video or whatever, we can do that again and just remind them that we're here to help. If we're very busy because we don't maintain a caseload, and it's just me and Avril, but we always can find time to fit people in and help.
Thank you. Yeah, I will. I'll remind our CEO Trish and my direct supervisor Wendy. I'll remind them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katlyn. Any other questions? That's totally okay. We can move on to another scenario. Deb, I'm just looking at some potential pieces here. What about, do you have any scenarios where the young person wants, say, one life, and then the caregivers are involved and want a different life for their young person, and how do you kind of support them through that?
Well,
so not eligible for PDD and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we see this scenario a lot, and we see it both ways. Is sometimes it's that the disability is the focus, and sorry, my dog's hitting me here. The disability is the focus, and the families are maybe concerned that their young adults can't do things, and otherwise it's sometimes that the disability needs to be more of a focus because the young person maybe can't reach the goal that's set by the caregiver. So an example of I want my child to be a doctor, and they may be on the spectrum and they may have Asperger's, but they maybe can't be a doctor, and they haven't been able to have success in school, like even if they've gone to university and they've had severe depression, and then we want to pull back a little bit and maybe go to 3 classes instead of 5, and people struggle with that. So we've had lots of those conversations, and they're kind of a one-on-one. We had one of the families that I worked with. This was a very unwell young man. He had significant mental health issues. He was running around downtown. He liked to go into stores and defecate to watch people's reactions from the smell, and he would just take any drug that was kind of available to him, and he was just kind of a wreck. And his mom's goal was for him to have his own place and live independent. Now he was 17 3/4 or something when we got involved, and no aid had been applied for, nothing. And she was kind of, well, he can just get his own place. Help him get his own place. And we're like, there is so much that needs to be done before this young person can manage their own situation. He did not know how to cook. He did not know how to clean. He did not know how to take care of his own physical well-being. The barrier is that he was so unwell, and he at one point was in an outer home placement with FSCD, and he was in there for quite a while. And he didn't have a lot of meetings at home, because when he went home, it caused he was abusive to a sibling, which caused children's services to be concerned. So here we had a really tricky situation, because we have a young person that needs to go home because their FSCD contract is closing. And then we've got, if he goes home, children's services is going to be there because he's a significant threat to these other 2 young people. So it was very, very tricky. He ended up, at the end of the day, we have a document that we got from Australia, and we reworked for Edmonton and area called the Are You Ready document, which we're going to make sure you guys all get a copy of as well. And it's a life skills document. So it talks about everything from, you know, do you know how to change a light bulb, unplug a toilet, cook? Do you know about budgeting? Like, it's got everything in this booklet and lots of pages to write notes on. Avril and I even did it with our own kids. Like, it is a very good document to see what you need to learn. And so we were able to work through that over several times with this individual, get him in with some mental health therapists that he liked so that he would decide to take medication, because to this guy, medication was a benefit to him. And then he ended up getting a basement suite and going on barriers for full-time employment through Alberta Works. He ended up getting a basement suite that his mom would go and help him do things. They did things like worked with a company that had pre-made meals. Like, we had this place in Sherwood Park called Easy as Pie, gourmet meals with real butter, real garlic, etc., that he just had to heat up in a microwave that were nutritious. On all of these different things, when he got his AISH money, because he did qualify for AISH, he was able to hire, private hire some people to come in and help. He was able to get someone to clean his place because he could not clean, like did not want to, it wasn't important, and it was not safe. So hired someone to come and clean. He had these meals. So we problem solved around the issues, because he wasn't PDD eligible and he didn't have the resources that he needed within himself. So we had to get other people to be the helpers for him. And it was actually ended up being very successful. You know, he had a Google machine where the Google machine would remind him to take his medication. You know, he had a phone, and the phone would also remind him to take his medications. Like, there was a lot of work went into this to help him. It was a real struggle, but at the end of the day, he did come out better at the end of it, but he still has significant mental health issues and lots of barriers, but again, lots of support.
We also had a kind of a really cool scenario as well. We had an 18-year-old young man who came through chat with his dad, and he really wanted to join the military, join the reserves, and dad was saying, nope, you can't, you're on the spectrum, they're not going to take you, they don't want you. And Deb and I said, no, just a minute, we know somebody who is in the reserves. And we called them, and he said, absolutely, come on down. We set up an appointment for that night. He went down with his dad. His dad was still skeptical that this kid was even going to be approved for the military because he was on the spectrum. He was high functioning. He was quirky, but he was an amazing individual. And he went down, and they started the process to sign him up to be a reservist. And when dad called us the next day, because we had a chat, dad was over the moon that his son was going to be in the reserves and start his life, because dad was adamant that there was no way that the military was going to take their kid, and this kid was going to end up sitting in the basement for the rest of his life. And we said, no, why can't we try? Why can't we send him? Why can't he apply? And if he doesn't get accepted, then they will tell him. And it's not coming from us, and it's not coming from you, Dad. It's coming from the military. And then if that doesn't work, then we'll pick up the pieces and we'll find something else. And Deb always says, life is hard, and life will teach them what they can and cannot do. And so all we did was we let him follow his dream, and he became a reservist. So that to us was phenomenal.
Thank you for sharing. I think we lost Sahana again.
And so we'll just keep going, because that's
yes,
what we
go
do
ahead.
So one of the other scenarios that we were going to chat about then was what happens when you have an individual who's been with FSCD and is aging out of FSCD, is going to be turning 18 and not eligible for PDD? And we do a lot of chats with individuals like that, and we see a lot of struggles because family is saying, no, they can't come home. They couldn't come home for the last 17 years, and just because they're turning 18, they can't come home now. And that's where Deb and I go in and we meet with the family and the individual, and we sit down and we say, okay, so what would that look like for you? What do you guys want? And then we work towards a transition plan so that the individual can be successful at whatever that's going to look like for them. Most times, parents don't realize that there isn't going to be the aftercare. There isn't going to be another group home where the individual is going to transition to. That's not reality. The reality is this individual is going to come home unless we come up with a different solution. And what would that solution look like? Well, maybe it means that we look at getting them approved for barriers for full-time employment, getting them a basement suite in Edmonton and where the landlord is upstairs, and putting in supports and resources so that the individual can be successful. And again, if that means having mom and dad look at easy as pie so the individual doesn't have to cook all the time. Maybe it means that we have Google, we have some surveillance cameras so that the individual, when they get home, it notifies mom and dad that they're home so that they're not worrying all the time. It provides them with that stability and that security, but yet allows them to be somewhat interdependent. And we always use the term interdependent because we don't believe that anybody is truly independent, because we all rely on each other to help us through life. Did you want to add to that, Deb?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you know, when we started using the word interdependent and the pushback that we were feeling from people and saying, oh, it's a big word, it's complex, like can't we just keep with independent? And so when Avril and I first started these jobs, we took the Are You Ready? And we each met with 35 people. And just so that you know, Avril and I did not know each other. Even though we both worked in this field forever, I was out in Sherwood Park and Avril was out in South Edmonton, and we had never, ever worked together. So first day of work, we meet each other and we're like, hey, you know, and hopefully we're like, we have become a team. So it was a little nerve-wracking because we didn't know each other. And hence we are a very tight team, Avril and I. But so we take these Are You Readies and we go out, and she meets with 35 people and I meet with 35 people. And then we bring back what we learned. And we had the exact same feedback. What the one was, we say, so, you know, what do you think about independence? Independence means I have to do it by myself. I don't need help. I have to be independent. No, I'm independent. And it was like, whoa, like, really, do we want people to be thinking that they have to go about this on their own? No, nobody in life has to go through everything by themselves. We all need somebody else. And so we really started changing everything to interdependence. You know, we all need somebody, and we give examples of, you know, you may independently, you know, go to the grocery store, but someone stocked those shelves, someone's ordered that food, like everything is interdependent. And we really were earlier was how much people identified themselves as their diagnosis. Hey, I'm Deb, I'm a transition specialist. Oh, hey, I'm Billy, I am special needs. I can't do this, I can't do that because I have this. And it just, that was a huge one for us. And then the other one was how many times young people were not given the opportunity to have life skills because either caregivers were burnt out or they had like lots of kids in your house. So it's hard to be like, you know, I'd like Billy to cook a meal, but I've got 4 other kids and I got to get them to activities and blah, blah, blah. You know, there is always very valid reasons. And then we would look at things like collective kitchens, which we'll talk about another time. But those were the three real big commonalities that Avril and I had at the end of that. But we do talk about interdependence all the time.
So again, Deb and I always talk about how fluid our jobs are. And one of the scenarios I'm going to talk about now is a fellow that came to us through a chat. He was a baker and had been involved in a baking accident and was not eligible for workman's comp. And so I assisted him with applying for the AISH application. And his doctor had to do what's called the Part B. And when his doctor wrote the Part B, he wasn't very thorough in how he wrote it. And we ended up going to an appeal. And so our jobs have branched out, and I was able to go with him to his appeal. But the thing that made this, his AISH appeal, but the thing that made this such a unique situation was that he had been sexually abused by both his dad and his high school teacher, and he wasn't able to sit through the appeal because as soon as the panel got there, he became incredibly emotional and he started to cry and he had to leave. So it became a really dire situation because if he couldn't attend the appeal with me, then they weren't going to hold it. So that's where we were able to advocate on his behalf and say, look, he cannot attend the appeal. Would it be all right if I went to the appeal on his behalf? I know this file inside and out, and I can advocate for him. And that's what happened. The appeal panel allowed me to go to the appeal on behalf of this individual and advocate for him, and we won the appeal. And to date, we have not lost an AISH appeal. So I think that speaks volumes in that when we actually go and meet with individuals, we ask a lot of questions and we find out a lot about the person so that when we go, we know them inside and out and we can do the best job representing them. And then the other individual that I wanted to speak about was, again, one of the ones where when an individual doesn't qualify for PDD and the family is concerned about what's going to happen next. And we spoke briefly about it a few times, but we see this often because parents worry that I think that parents fret because parents have been a parent and they've done everything for the individual. And I think as parents, we do that naturally. And it's our job to just let the parents know that they're going to have to start stepping back. And the reason why we always say that you're going to have to start stepping back and allowing the individuals to start learning independence or interdependence and using the "Are you ready?" is because we don't all live forever. And we need to make our people as interdependent as possible so that they can have the skills necessary so that they can be able to do things for themselves. And a lot of times it may not be, we don't expect them to cook full meals, we don't expect them to be able to do all the gardening, but it's doing tasks and jobs that they are capable of doing and that they are able to do, because it gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them a job to be able to do every day. And we always say that AISH is just an income, and you need to be able to do something on a daily basis so that you have purpose and you feel good about what you do. And I think that during this COVID crisis, when all of us are at home, I think it really made light of that, and it really drove home that, because if you had nothing to do in your life, and if you were sitting at home like a lot of individuals were, we don't want that to be for our people. We want our individuals to be able to have something that they can do that's going to give them a sense of pride and purpose, whether it's meeting up with other individuals and working on internet games, or going down to the river valley and meeting up with a group of individuals where you forage for your own food, and then you have a chef at the end of the day who helps you prepare your food, and you learn to eat what you foraged. And those are the kind of cool things that we always talk about, is having a life outside of your home if you're able and capable, so that you could have joy and meaning. Is there any, Deb, did you want to add to that? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, no, I just unmuted. Yeah, I think, you know, if I was to talk about what I love the most about this position, is that we can do things like what you mentioned, Avril, about going with adults to help with appeals. We often will do a meeting like this, or Avril and I also do training for foster parents on transitioning and new social workers. And we'll get messages after and say, hey, my cousin's sister's brother's auntie's uncle needs help. Is there any way you can help him? And we're like, yeah, you don't have to have any status or be any age to get support from us. And we really work hard, like Avril and I in our integrated transition specialist role, of just helping anybody and trying to find a resource. If we can't find a resource, one of our responsibilities, especially with the governmental processes, is to try and make change. So that's how chat became involved, was because of the denial of PDD letters and the aging out youth. The big picture was to help with communication between, you know, some of the young people would say that they go to meetings and the typewriter's out and there's too much notes being taken. So that was a process for that. Like, we just keep creating things and we report them to the powers that be and to the ministries. And we know that there's a lot of struggles that people have. Like Avril talked about, like parents, like, you know, the grief and the loss that people go through when, you know, you're raising a young person and maybe they're not moving on, like your friend's kids, and the grief and loss that you feel through that. So we try to help people that we talk to, you know, process that grief and loss that they're going to. And like, the people beside us, our team, are the best. And, you know, we're always, you know, I can say, like, we march hand in hand and try to help. And I give total credit. Like, I honestly do. Like, our boss, Kelly, she is just so open to us being creative and trying to help Albertans the best that we possibly can. And this partnership between disability services and children's services is a gift. I'm really so thankful that they have that, even though our ministries are totally separate. We've been able to really come together and get support from both sides and other government agencies to work together. So yeah, that's, I guess, what I have to say about that piece.
So Deb and I always coin the phrase that we're like octopus, and that there isn't a government program that we don't have our hands in, that we're not knowledgeable on the policy and procedures. So AISH, PDD, Alberta Works, Alberta Supports, education, justice, health. We have contacts in all ministries, and if we're not certain about something, then we will immediately email and find the answer to the problem that we have in front of us. And I think that makes us able to do our job really well, in that we will give you the most accurate information, and that can assist you guys in helping with whatever obstacles or barriers you're coming across. And if we find an obstacle and a barrier, and we know that this is going to affect a lot of individuals, then we will again take it forward to our director. But we don't just take the problem forward. We always come up with a solution that's viable, so that we can assist with making the necessary change, because that's important. Change is always important.
I think some of the, like, we've seen some really sad cases, but I think some of the ones that have really been sad is we've had some individuals that are maybe 50 or 60 that their siblings have brought them, heard about chat and brought them to us. And they're, because the parents have gone into care center or the parents have died, and this young person has never had a life outside of home. They don't have any supports. Their families have taken care of them, and it's heartbreaking. And they've had someone do something for them. Their mom has done their cooking, their laundry, their cleaning. They basically kind of watch TV all day, and then all of a sudden they get old and they have to go to care center, and then we're trying to get things going. And there's no such thing as really fast tracking. I mean, a government agency has a process, and we can't jump the queue if you're in a queue, unless the only time that things get really panicky is when somebody, and I think Avril's going to talk about a case with some young girls that were terminal, but in the case where we had this guy, he didn't have a doctor, he didn't have anyone, and trying to get him the supports he needs. He didn't have any identification. You can't get Alberta Works without having identification. And so again, as in our role as transition specialists, we were able to pull some strings and ask some favors and get some ID. And oh my God, it was kind of crazy, but at the same time, we didn't just say, sorry, you don't have ID. Sorry, your parents are in a nursing home now. Well, you got a brother. Well, brother, go deal with your other brother, not our problem. We were like, oh man, what can we do to help support? And that's been, we've seen so many different scenarios. And a lot of people, and Avril's going to talk, I think, about these two young girls, but a lot of people don't know what resources are out there. They have no idea there's family support for children with disabilities. They have no idea that there's Gateway. They have no idea that there's H. And they can really hit a rough spot when they're trying to do this on their own, which could kind of lead to your conversation, Av, about those two girls.
Oh, absolutely. So Deb and I received a very panicked phone call from a father who was he was at his wit's end. He had two young daughters. One was 18 and one was 19. And they had been diagnosed with a very, very rare syndrome. And the syndrome is unique in itself in that it acts as if they had cerebral palsy and Alzheimer's. And life expectancy is 23, only 23 years of age. And this disability is awful in that it immediately starts to take grasp of the individual's mind and their body. And within months, these girls who were able to attend high school were no longer able to attend high school. And the dad was desperate because he had absolutely no supports and he was trying to do it by himself. And it was fine when the girls were able to catch the bus and go to school and do everything. But over summer, they were no longer able to catch the bus and go to school independently. So he was out on his front lawn and he was talking to his neighbor and he was crying and just talking to the neighbor and letting the neighbor know that he was at his wit's end and he didn't know what to do anymore. And he had no supports for his girls and he didn't know what the future was going to hold. And funny enough, the neighbor said, hey, I know two people that I think can help you because they helped me. And so he then contacted us on a Monday. By Tuesday, Deb and I met him at his place of employment because he couldn't get off work. And by Wednesday, we had the AISH and the PDD applications in place. We had submitted them. And by Friday, they had been both approved for AISH and PDD. And again, this is one of those unique situations that doesn't have to happen often, but because of the severity of the girl's diagnosis, because of the severity of the situation, and because Dad had no ability to care for these girls on his own, we were able to get home care in place. PDD came on board with supports. AISH came on board immediately so that these girls could have a quality of life, because within 60 days, they were no longer able to attend school. They were no longer able to do any of the things that they could do 30 days before. And so it was giving them the quality of life that they needed so that they could live their last few years with dignity and grace. And we could not have done that without the partnerships that assist us, because they were amazing as well in getting everything in place, because it's not about us, it's about the individuals that we service. And I think that's what's most important, is that Deb and I go in and we look at the individual as a person, and we're able to get the best supports for them to make them successful.
You're muted, Deb.
There we go. I was pressing the wrong button. I guess I was like, in that scenario, again, it was word of mouth. Someone was gardening, told this dad, and there was a mom involved too. They were completely burnt out. I left and I cried. Like, I felt so, my heart broke for these people. Of course, they were going through grief and loss, and their kids both their daughters had this, and they were so ill. And, but they were completely burnt out and didn't know that there was support. They never even heard of FSCD. They were trying to, because these girls had so many medical appointments, they were losing hours in work. They were trying to fund these medical appointments in the States. Like, there was so much going on. And like, my heart just broke, like literally broke for them, because like, we knew that they were going to lose their daughters. But the thing is, that's the only way, like with if somebody, like when we were talking about kind of bypassing and getting things faster, like with AISH, they will move faster if somebody is terminal, but typically we have to wait in a line just like anybody else. But if you were to come to a chat or have a conversation with Avril or I, what we could do is connect you with and tell you what you need to get barriers for full-time employment, some income for your young adults if need be.
So there's tons of different supports that we haven't touched on today, and it would be, so when you come to a chat meeting, or if you email us and you ask us to come and assist you, then at that time we can look at all. There are so many supports and so many hidden gems that even Deb and I don't know about, and we make it a mission to learn about different supports all the time, so that we can ensure that we are giving the best information and the best supports for the individuals that we work with. And on a monthly basis, we try and find new supports to make us even better at what we do. So I see Sahana's back. No, maybe not.
I don't think so.
Well,
there's a question. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to read it out. So Donna asked, do you have network contacts in post-secondary schools? 17-year-old female looking at going to NATE for January 21 and would benefit from on-campus transition assistance.
So what we always suggest is when you have an individual that's going to go to NATE, is that they immediately go and tour the campus. Make sure that they're comfortable with it. They can also do a buddy system at NATE and spend a day in whatever program they're looking at, so that they know if that's the most appropriate program for them. And the third thing is, make sure that you get to the student services, talk to one of the staff there, and they can assess you and send you for a DRES assessment, disability related educational supports, so that when you finally get into school, so that when you start at the very beginning, you have the appropriate supports needed to help to make you successful. So when you have a DRES assessment, what that is then is you will be sent to see a psychiatrist or psychologist or anybody who will assess your needs, and it's paid for by the Alberta government. And then they will put in place technology if you need technology. If you have autism and you struggle with outside noises, maybe it means that they can supply you with headphones so that you can, when you go to class, you're not hearing people chewing gum or any of those things. Because the idea of DRES is to make the individual successful so that they can graduate and then go into the workforce. So
And I think too, like, you know, the student for the day is great. Not every program offers it, but the ones that do, you know, you can always ask. It is great. They can check out, be with another student, see if they can handle kind of that program, and if that's what they really want to do. There are through a agency called BGS, they do have a 3-day workshop that's usually held at the Alberta Works offices that does also help figuring out what career you want to do. There's many different things, and depending on the individual, what we would recommend. So Donna, your young girl, you said, has an autism diagnosis. It's informal until in person, and we know that autism is a spectrum, and so, you know, depending on where she falls on that. But if she has had an assessment done at school, that is the best thing if the schools can get that done ahead of time, because you're on a wait list. I mean, I've known people that don't get their DRESS assessments until their second year of college. So, you know, trying to get those assessments done at school, if you can get them done, that will talk, we really need, in my opinion, and this varies on every person, but a functional assessment as well. Like, what do they need in order to function, but as well as what do they need in order to do well in school. So for some people that have, say, a processing disability, and so they can't listen, decipher, and write notes at the same time. Like, they can't, their brain's not made up that way. So there's technology where there's pens that record the lecture, and you write down keywords on a special paper, this pad, and then you can press it and it will play it back to you later. Like, there's a lot of different supports and technologies. And I think too is letting young people know that, yes, this is a 2-year program, but let's go in with it being a 3-year program for you, like once you meet with the advisor. And so, you know, they start knowing that they're not going to maybe graduate with that class unless you know for sure that they can kind of do that 5-course or 6-course caseload, because that's a big struggle too. Depression and anxiety and thoughts of suicide are huge in post-secondary education. And you know, we want to make sure that people that are feeling supported. It's hard. Some people, they need a lot of extra support, but with, like what Avril said, the DRESS assessment is very, very helpful. If you can get one done ahead of time, that's even better. There is, when things get back to, you know, after COVID's done, but, you know, the University of Alberta does assessments. There's different places that do assessments for lower costs in case you're needing to fund one yourself, you know, that we could help with. But also just really being realistic with your individual. Like, yes, you can reach your goal, but like, this isn't a marathon. Like, you know, pace yourself the best you can. And if they're in a 2-year program and they're 10 months in and they're falling apart, then just stop, refocus, meet with the advisors again, and get get some supports in there.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? You can either write in the chat or unmute.
Well, I guess something else that I can talk about too, that is some of the barriers that we face, is that young people, sometimes we like, oh, they can't handle money. But it's not because they can't handle money, it's because they have never had money to handle, and they haven't learned that skill. So we've even talked to parents about like a Monopoly game kind of thing. Like, you know, if you get $1,000 and you have to hand over $800 to rent, you know, where are you going to buy food and groceries and toilet paper and all these different kinds of things, you know, and working on them, allowing them to have funding. Because if you were to apply for certain kind of adult guardianship, they want proof that individuals have actually tried stuff and then not been able to succeed. So just as many options as possible of handling money, working with, even with a bank card, you know, I've worked in my career with individuals with significantly cognitively low IQs that can work a bank machine. And what they've learned is maybe not so much the understanding of money, but they've understood the feeling of not having the money. And so they've learned to, you know, use the debit machine, and all of a sudden, like, they learn with mom or caregiver that they don't have the money for the Slurpee, someone could rescue them. But they learn the feelings around it, and because it's very, very hard to get your rights taken away as an adult. And so we want to make sure that people have as many opportunities to learn these skills as young as possible. And the same as like cooking, having a bank account, calling a doctor. So if your young person needs to see their doctor or their dentist, sit beside them, write down, practice what you're going to say to book that appointment. You know, having a cell phone, and I know there's a lot of about cell phones, and oh, they're going to be on porn all night or on video games all night. You come up with some solutions for that as well. But you know, putting their medication alarms in, putting their doctor's appointments in, because when we see this all the time, they turn 18 and they decide they're going to go do things on their own, and the parents not able to protect them because they can't get guardianship because these young people know how to make decisions. And then these young getting ID, yes, go try for your driver's license. You may, you know, fail 10 times doing your learners, but you can try. Opportunities, and we just need to be there to help them with their feelings if they don't succeed. You know, when we talk about driver's license, you know, sometimes when we're doing training with foster parents, they'll say, oh, you know, I tell Abel, like, you're not going to drive, like, you can't drive, you don't know, you'll never know how to drive. And we'll say, well, don't say that. Like, the world will tell them that because they won't pass the test. Like, you can be there as a support, but if you're fighting with them and you're knocking heads over something that really you don't have control over, the Alberta government who gives them their license has the control over. Like, pace yourself, pick your battles. So when you have a conversation with Avril or I, we talk about everything and anything. Anyone could call us, and we're open to feedback, and we're open to you know, sharing our wisdom with you and the wisdom of our partners. And we just are always trying to look for strategies and support.
Yes. Are there any other questions from the group here? Just being mindful of time, I wanted to make sure that everyone has access to the resources that Deb and Avril mentioned. So can I ask anyone who would like a copy of those to leave their email address in the group chat, and we'll make sure that gets out to you.
I just want to say thank you very, very much, guys, for allowing us to spend this 2 hours with you and to tell you all about what we do. And please feel free to email us, let others know about us. And thank you very much again.
Thank you for sharing with us. And we'll see you again at 7. If you know anyone else who would be interested in this session, please share it with them. And yes.
Well, we look forward to being in contact with whoever wants to shoot us an email. You've got our emails now, and feel free to share them if you're working with someone or you have a friend or anyone. But just yeah, share away. And so we'll get those attachments. I guess. Do we send? Well, I guess I'll just send them to you, Unique, and then you can send them out. Okay.
Yes, no problem. I'll share Deb and Avril's email address again here.
Take care, guys.
All right, take care. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go.
Thank you, guys. So I'll see you again at 7.
Can we do a little bit earlier just to make sure that everything works?
Yeah, definitely. I can log on at 6:30 if you want, or 6:45.
That's a little bit too soon, but how about
6:45.
Yeah.
6:45.
Yeah. All right. See you
All
then.
right. Was it okay, Unique? Like, did we?
Oh, it was
what
great.
You wanted or?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No,
Cool.
you went through the scenarios like exactly what questions that we see people asking. So no, definitely.
Shut up. Mine was harder because Deb at least had prompting. I'd fly by the seat of my ass, man.
You know what? Sorry about that. I actually did have the prompting, but I was also getting messages from Sahana, and so later on.
We don't care. As you can tell, we're informal. We just
Exactly.
go for it.
I love it. You guys are similar, like to Gateway in that way.
Yeah. We're okay. We can manage.
Okay, so I'll do similar intros at the beginning, like Sahana did, and then I'll let you guys take it away.
And you know what? I would videotape this one too, the 7 o'clock one, because if the other one, if this one's better than the other one, then you can just deep six that one.
Exactly.
All right.
So, what's your Unique? Do I have your email?
Yeah. I will just put it in the chat if that's easier.
Yeah, I'm sure I've got that. Hasn't changed.
Just in case.
It's so long. You guys need to get rid of that.
Oh, I know. It is so long. Had them forever.
Okay, see you guys at 6:45.
Bye.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
Bye.